Before kings wore crowns of gold, before emperors sat on marble thrones, there were pharaohs. They were not men. They were gods, walking the earth. And to their enemies, they were nightmares. From chariot-riding conquerors to tyrants who ruled with whips and fear. These were the pharaohs who made the Nile itself tremble. The pharaoh. To the Egyptians, he was not just a ruler, he was the living Horus, the falcon god on earth. His word was law. His breath was destiny. To disobey him was to defy heaven itself. Some pharaohs brought peace, trade, and monuments that still scraped the desert sky. But others ruled through fear. Their names carved into stone not as fathers of their people, but as scourges of enemies, destroyers of kingdoms, and masters of war. This is their story. The 10 most feared pharaohs of ancient Egypt. 10. Sneferu, the builder of fear. Imagine a king who built not one pyramid, but 3. Sneferu of the 4th dynasty was obsessed with eternal glory. But his legacy was not just monuments, it was terror. He launched brutal campaigns into Nubia and Libya, dragging thousands into slavery. His enemies whispered his name like a curse. For when Sneferu came, he left only chains. 9. Thutmose I, the river of blood. Before Thutmose I, Egypt was a kingdom of the Nile. But under his rule, Egypt became an empire. He marched south into Nubia with such ferocity that the river itself was said to run red. On his return, he hung the corpses of defeated kings from the prow of his ship. A warning carved in flesh. Defy Egypt, and this is your fate. 8. Amenhotep II, the warrior athlete. Amenhotep II was no ordinary pharaoh. He was an athlete, a wrestler, a man who could draw a bow so strong no other archer dared touch it. In battle, he was merciless. Captured enemies were tied to the prows of his ships, their blood washing against the hull as his fleet returned to Thebes. He boasted of slaughtering prisoners with his own hands. A pharaoh who reveled not only in victory, but in the fear his rage inspired. 7. Ramesses III, the last great defender. The world was collapsing. Sea peoples, mysterious invaders, swept across the Mediterranean like a tidal wave. But Ramesses III stood against them. He turned the Nile Delta into a killing field, his archers unleashing storms of arrows that blotted out the sun. When the dust settled, the invaders lay broken. Their ships burned, their bodies fed to the crocodiles. Ramesses III became the pharaoh who stopped the flood of chaos, but at the cost of ruling Egypt through endless war. 6. Ahmose I, the liberator with iron hands. Before Ahmose, Egypt was humiliated. Foreign rulers, the Hyksos, sat on the throne. Ahmose rose like a storm. His armies besieged city after city, until the invaders were driven into the sea. But Ahmose's vengeance did not stop there. He hunted them across the Levant, burning their strongholds, enslaving their families. To Egypt, he was the savior. To the Hyksos, he was a shadow of terror that ended their dynasty forever. 5. Seti I, the ruthless strategist. Seti I was a general before he was king. On campaign, he was precise, methodical, merciless. Against the Hittites, Libyans, and Syrians, he marched with such discipline that his enemies learned to flee at the sight of his banners. Temples show him striking down foes personally, his arm raised high, mace ready to crush skulls. It was not just war. It was theater. Fear was his greatest weapon. 4. Khufu, the tyrant of the Great Pyramid. We remember Khufu for the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But to his people, he was no wonder. He was terror. Ancient sources describe him as a cruel despot. Tens of thousands labored under the sun, dying as stones were hauled skyward. For glory eternal, Khufu sacrificed generations. the pyramid still stands. Not just as a tomb, but as a monument built from fear. 3. Ramesses II, the god of war. Ramses the Great. His name echoes through history like thunder. At Kadesh, he faced the Hittite army in one of the greatest battles of the ancient world. Surrounded, outnumbered, betrayed by faulty intelligence. Any other king would have fled. But Ramses mounted his chariot, his horses blazing like fire. He charged into the heart of the Hittite horde. Cutting a path through chaos, the battle ended in stalemate. But Ramses' legend grew unstoppable. He filled temples with carvings of his triumphs. To his people, he was invincible. To his enemies, he was terror incarnate. 2. Thutmose III, the Napoleon of Egypt. Thutmose III was the ultimate conqueror. He led 17 campaigns across the Near East. His armies striking with speed and precision. At the Battle of Megiddo, he pulled a daring gamble, leading his troops through a narrow mountain pass that could have ended in disaster. Instead, he caught his enemies unprepared. A victory so total that it became legend. Thutmose didn't just win battles. He erased his enemies from memory, cities burned, kings bowed. Egypt became the superpower of its age. 1. Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh. Not all fear is born from war. Some comes from within. Akhenaten shattered Egypt's religion. He closed temples, banned gods worshipped for centuries, and forced his people to bow only to Aten, the sun disk. Priests were ruined. Traditions broken. The entire foundation of Egyptian life was torn apart. His rule plunged Egypt into chaos. To his enemies, he was a mad prophet. To his own people, he was a nightmare. Even after his death, Egypt tried to erase him from history. Chiseling his name from walls. Smashing his statues. Cursing his memory. But in that erasure, his terror lived on. Fear. That is what bound them all. From Khufu's pyramid slaves to Thutmose's conquered kings. From enemies crucified on ships' prows to entire religions cast into the fire. The pharaohs ruled not only with gold, but with shadows. Some were loved. Some were hated. But all were feared. And fear is its own kind of immortality. But even gods die. The pharaohs who once ruled as eternal Horus faded into sand and memory. Empires rose and fell. Their statues crumbled. Their tombs were plundered. Yet the fear they inspired lingers still. Every time we stand before the pyramids. Every time we gaze at a temple wall showing a king striking down his foes. We feel a shiver. The echo of dread that once shook the ancient world. Today, we call them rulers, kings, even tyrants. But to their people, they were gods. And gods do not ask for love. They demand obedience. What do we fear more? The sword? The whip? The chains? Or the silence of knowing that power has no mercy? And that one man's will can shape the lives of millions? The pharaohs are gone. But the lesson remains. Fear can build pyramids. Fear can forge empires. Fear can last forever. Before emperors. Before conquerors. Before kings of marble and steel. There were pharaohs. Men who ruled like gods. Men who left monuments of stone and echoes of terror. If this journey into Egypt's shadows moved you, honor the forgotten past. Leave a like. Subscribe for more. And as always, may history never be forgotten.